Welcome, everybody. My name is Irene Pasternack, teaching Feldenkrais with Northwest Parkinson's. And today is going to be a day that we play with creativity. And so I'd like everybody to show me your right hand. Okay, good. And now show me your right hand another way. And another way. And another way. And another way. You getting some ideas from other people as you're doing this too? And another way. Some make me laugh as I see them. And another way. Okay, good. So, no fears, you're going to be able to do today's class. You all have a nice healthy dose of creativity in your souls, and that's what we're going to play with today. All right. So to start with, I said we were going to play with walking today, and so let's do a measurement of having you get up and walk around a bit. And as you walk around, notice what your arms do when you walk. Do they spend more time in front of your body or behind your body? Do they move the same way left and right, or does one arm move a little more than the other one? And if walking is difficult for you, you can stay sitting and imagine this. And then walk and notice how long are your steps. So if there was a yardstick on the floor, just see how long your steps are and how wide, how much room is between your feet. If you were walking on floorboards, how many floorboards would be in between your feet as you're walking? And with your right leg, does it spend more time in front of you or behind you when you're walking? And how about your left foot? More time in front or behind? Alrighty. So a lot of this lesson is going to be done in standing, and ideally standing in a place you can put one hand on a wall or one hand on a door. So like Ann Wood, I see you have this lovely door right behind you. You could just step back and put your hand on the on the, what do you call that? The frame of the door. But a wall would be good. And so everybody needs this, even if your balance is superbly wonderful. You need a wall to hold on to. Um, and it's not like you're holding on the wall. And if your situation is such that there's no wall available, a hand on the back of your chair could work too. But a wall is better. Okay. So you have your one hand on the back of your chair or one hand on your wall, and use your creativity and move as many ways as possible without your hand leaving that spot on the wall or the chair. So this is like the wall is your dance partner. Your other arm can move in any direction it wants. Your hips can move in any direction they want. Your other foot can move in as many ways as it can. Just the only constraint is that that arm stays on the wall. You can face the arm. You can face away from the arm. You can turn your belly toward your arm or your belly away. Some of you might want to explore tucking your head under your arm. If you haven't yet tried moving your other foot or moving both of your feet, how far could you walk while you're tethered by your arm to this spot in the room? And all as you're doing these things, sense in the area around your shoulder blade, around your shoulder that's attached to the hand that's on the wall. So the next step is we're going to do YouTube videos of everybody dancing with the wall with their hand on the wall. Not really. Okay. And then walk around a little bit. Walk around and see how your arms respond to walking. And then come and sit down for a moment. And anybody notice that their arm moved differently in walking after playing with the wall? Okay. Yeah. There's something about using a joint in the opposite direction as usual. So putting the hand still and moving the body. When we move it in that unfamiliar way, we rediscover the range of movement in the joint. So rediscovering some possibilities in your ribs and your shoulders. Okay. And just as you're sitting there, do you feel a little asymmetric? Like close your eyes, sit toward the front of your chair so you're over your sit bones, and see if the distance between your ears and your shoulder is different on the side you were just playing with than it is on the other. If one line between those, like there was a silk thread between, one line might be longer. And exhale, wait a moment and breathe in, and see which side of you does the air go into more. Perhaps one side feels taller than the other. Okay. So now with your other arm, as you're sitting here, imagine your arm is attached to a wall, just like you were doing in standing. And you just imagine the arm is up there. And imagine moving your body in as many ways as possible around it. So you can imagine turning to face the wall or turning your back to the wall, walking your foot in as many different positions as possible. And feel if when you imagine, you can sense little tiny micro movements in your body. Imagine looking at the ceiling, looking at the floor, going under your arm. Imagine moving your other shoulder while this arm is attached. And then use your creativity to imagine any other movements you could do with this arm attached in your imagination. And then stand up and go for a walk. And see if your imagination had an impact on this arm and the way this shoulder works. And then find your wall or your chair wherever you're touching. And fill in some of the gaps for your imagination. Start moving around in as many ways as you can think of around this arm. And sense, what's your pelvis doing? How do your feet respond to your movements? Sense your ribs. When do your ribs compress? When do they expand? What if you let go of the wall or your chair with your other hand, so you turn and open up away from your arm? You're trying to just move in as many ways as you can think of around this arm. I see some people, it looks like they're playing hide and seek, looking under their arm, looking over their arm. Most days we use our arms in just such a limited range of motion. We cook, we drive, we compute, we read, but there's really quite a lot possible. Good. All right, and go for a walk. Okay. So now come to a wall again where you can lean with your side on the wall this time. So you kind of cozy on up to the wall so your arm is long and you're just leaning against it with your shoulder. And begin to explore sliding your shoulder forward and backward on the wall. Like your shoulder itched and you wanted to scratch it by sliding it forward and backward. And notice as you do that how your whole torso has to move and twist a little bit. And begin to notice what your eyes are doing as you do this. Do your eyes look up or down when you're facing the wall a little bit more? Do your eyes look up or down when your back is a little more to the wall? And if you find a pattern, exaggerate it. So really when you turn one way, look way up toward the ceiling and the other way down toward the floor. It's important. I see some people not touching a surface with their shoulder. It's important to have this surface on touching. And then play with your breath so that, your eyes, so that it does the opposite thing that they were doing. So if you, look up when you were looking down, look down when you were looking up. Okay, and pause for a moment. And then same shoulder on the wall, doing the same motion of drawing a line like if your shoulder was coated in paint, you're just painting left and right on the wall. And notice, when do you pull your belly in and when do you push your belly out? Does your body have an automatic response of some difference in when your abdomen feels a little contracted and when it feels stretched out? And if you notice a pattern, exaggerate it. It might be related to when you look up and when you look down. And then try and reverse the pattern so that you pull your belly in when you were pushing it out. Okay. And come away, pause for a moment. And now in the same position with your shoulder on the wall, notice, where do you start this movement of drawing a line with your shoulder? Do you start it with your hips or with your feet or with your shoulder? Do a little experimenting to see where does it feel like it's most powerful to, if you were trying to make an indentation in the wall with your shoulder, where would you find the power to do this? This is a useful lesson for rolling over in bed, of feeling, how do you organize to bring your shoulder behind you, or how do you organize to bring your shoulder in front of you? Okay, go for a little walk. Come back to the wall, same shoulder. And this time with the shoulder, go up and down on the wall. How do you do that? How do you, there are two common ways that people bring their shoulder up and down. Oh, and I'm seeing a third way. So one way is to bend your knees back and forth. So if you bend your knees and straighten your knees, your shoulder will go. You could also just bend the knee that's closer to the wall and straighten it. Or you could just bend your other knee. This is so much fun with 23 people. I see 23. Well, I don't see everybody, but I see different ways. You could just move your collarbone and your shoulder blade so that the motion doesn't go through your ribs or your legs at all. It's just with the shoulder, like you were shrugging your shoulder a little bit. You could make a little line that way. You could stretch out the ribs on that side, so you could try and press the wall with all your ribs on the side facing the wall, or you could pull your ribs and squeeze them and pull them away from the wall. So you could go up and down just purely with this rib movement. Okay. And now you have the four parts of like a cross that you've drawn on the wall, a plus sign, and connect the four parts and draw a circle with your shoulder on the wall. And feel how your hips make some sort of circle in order for the shoulder to make a circle. And your knees might participate in this. And go the other way in your circle. And then go for a walk. And is there a way that your arm, as it's swinging as you're walking, you can feel a little echo of these movements on the wall? Okay, let's do the other shoulder. So come to the other wall, or the other shoulder against the wall. And first draw the line forward and backward. And feel how your torso helps you let that line be a little longer. And notice, when do you look up? When do you look down? Exaggerate that. And then reverse it. So in one direction, look up at the ceiling, and one look down at the floor. And begin noticing your belly, of when you push it out, when you pull it in, and of what your shoulder blade is doing as you do this motion. When does it go away from your spine? When does it go toward your spine? And pause for a moment. And then find a way to make your shoulder on the wall go up and down, exploring all the possibilities, driving it from your knees, driving it by taking your hip up and down, by bending one knee and straightening the other, by just your collarbone and shoulder blade, by your ribs against the wall. And then play with building that circle. So you connect the 4 points of the plus sign that you've made on the wall into a circle. Playing with, where do you drive this circle? Does it come from your feet? Does it come from your hips? From your ribs? Just from your collarbone and shoulder blade? You can do it differently every time you do it. How much do you rotate toward the wall and away from the wall as you draw this circle? Good. Go for a walk. And at any point during this lesson, if you need to sit down for a bit, refresh yourself before you come up, you can always take a break even when I don't call one. You know your body better, and it's more important that you stay comfortable and feeling safe than that you do every movement in the lesson. Okay. So everybody sit down for a moment. Let's all take a sit down break. Anybody feeling some changes in their walking, changes in their arm and shoulder movement? Yeah. So these are some lovely ways that if you're feeling locked up, um, to go find the wall, make it your dance partner for a moment, put a hand on the wall and dance around it. And it resets your brain into realizing, oh, my shoulder can move. And then it will move as you walk. So it the cool thing is you don't really have to know what is it I'm doing, but just know that you can open up your chest and get your torso moving with this kind of little play. Alrighty. So now we're gonna stand up again and put either your one hand on a wall or one hand on a chair. Or if your balance is particularly tippy, you might want to put both hands on a wall or both hands on the chair. And you're going to plant one foot on the ground and move your body and dance your body around this foot. So I do want you touching a chair or the wall with a hand. And you can switch your hands around as you're dancing, but the constraint is one foot stays on the floor and you're moving the rest of you around it. This one can be a little more challenging to, you could take your other foot closer to this foot or further away. You could go up on your toes, some of you, or rock back on your heel. You could face the wall you're touching or the chair. You could face away from it just as much as your hips can turn around. Okay, good. And try it a little bit with the other leg. So plant your other leg and just explore. You could imagine that your other foot is a paintbrush and it was painting the floor, or your other foot could splatter some paint on the walls by kicking a little bit. Your eyes and head could look down, they could look up. And then walk around a little. And come find your friendly wall again and put your whole side against the wall. And this time, with the hand that's on the wall side, hold your iliac crest, that bone in your hip, the top of the pelvis. And I find for this, when you're against the wall, if I was playing with this before and now I'm going, how did I do that? You could reach your other hand around and feel it, or just have your elbow pointing back toward the wall so that your hand is on the hip. And, you know, let go of the hand for a moment. Just let your hands hang and put your hip against the wall and draw a line forward and backward with your hip. And do it by turning. So your side is on the wall and you turn your belly toward the wall and then you turn your back toward the wall. And feel how that makes you roll around that hip on the wall. What I want is for you to now put your hand on that place on your pelvis and feel that bone move. See if you can lead this motion with that bone that you're trying to move that forward and back. So you'll end up facing the wall a little and then away from the wall, feeling that hip roll around the wall. This is also really useful for rolling over in bed. When when you're driving the motion from the hip and rolling it forward, notice how your chest and your head have to roll the other way in order for the hip to move freely against the wall. See if you can turn so far that like your belly is really pointing at the wall or pointing away from the wall. That the hip is like a tractor, and that I think it's just really interesting feeling the bones inside move as you do that. Okay? And rest in standing there for a moment. And now take that hip and go up and down the wall, just like you did with your shoulder before. So your knees can do it, or you could drop one knee and raise the other knee. But like your hip itches and you want to scratch it on the wall. And put both hands on your pelvis on that iliac crest and feel the movements and it might be easiest to feel with a hand away from the wall, but as your hip is going up and down the wall, feel how your pelvis can tilt a little bit. Yeah, good. And now with your hip, draw a circle on the wall. You could visualize your favorite color paint that you've dipped your hip in and you're painting, and see, is your circle round that you're painting? What would you have to do to make it a little rounder? Paint in the other direction. And you know sponge painting, where you take a sponge and you dab it against the wall? A few times, take your hip and just lightly try and touch the wall in different places, like you were doing a little bit of sponge art on the wall, and your hip is your paintbrush. Good. And then walk around for a little bit and see what feels different between your walk on your left and your right. Is your sense of what your pelvis is doing in the walk different? Is there a way it can rotate a little bit more on the side that was toward the wall? And perhaps can one leg take a little bit longer step than the other? And perhaps could one leg stay behind you in your walk longer than the other one? And then come and sit down for a moment. And sit toward the front of your chair, your knees wide, your feet flat. And feel if something feels different about the way you're sitting on the right side and the left side. If one side of your pelvis and back feel more relaxed, one sit bone, the chair's softer on one side than the other. The eyes closed really helps for sensing the differences. One foot might feel closer to the floor. Okay. And then do your ears feel the same height? Do your eyes feel the same height? There may be some little differences. Does your mood different left and right? Does one side feel calmer? And then come back to the wall, and we'll play with your other hip on the wall. So begin using this side of your pelvis to roll on the wall so that your belly faces the wall or your belly goes away from the wall. And feel how that makes a horizontal line on the wall that you could use this rotation movement to paint on the wall. And notice when your eyes look up and when your eyes look down. When you push your belly out a little, when you pull it in. Notice, is your line straight that you make on the wall, or does it curve up or down at the end? And put your hand on your iliac crest on the top of your hip and just feel the movement of that part of you as you rotate. How it comes forward. Yeah, good. All right, pause for a moment and standing. And then begin to slide that hip up and down the wall, using as many different techniques as you can think of to slide it up and down. The one knee or both knees. The pressing your ribs on the wall or squeezing your ribs together. Perhaps shrugging your shoulder a little bit might help your hip make these lines up and down the wall. And then when you imagine the painting mark you've made on the wall with your hip, begin to connect the four corners or the 4 points of the plus sign and go around in a circle. And that circle, remember when you went and made your horizontal line, sometimes your belly had to face the wall and sometimes your belly had to go away from the wall. So keep this rotation in there, because it's that rotation in walking that is what improves our balance and lets us stay so the weight can be under the base of the fourth toe. But it improves the balance in the front back direction. And if you haven't yet, go the other direction in your circle. Good. And then come away from the wall and walk. And then come have a seat, rest for a moment. And just check in with yourself in sitting, your sense of symmetry. And then come on back up to standing. Short break. Just a few more movements. Come back to your wall where you can put a hand on the wall. And this is one that do it if this feels safe to you. If it doesn't, do it without crossing your feet. But if it feels comfortable for you to cross one foot over the other as your hand is on the wall, stand and leave your feet crossed for a moment. And with your feet crossed, do as much dance as you can, like you did at the beginning, of moving around your arm, but with your foot crossed, with your feet crossed. Okay. I'm gonna change this a little bit. Can everybody find a doorway? An open door. And with the open door, if you stand right in the middle of the doorway, you can put one hand on both sides of the door frame. So you face the open part and you put the door frame between your hands. So I see some people one hand on the door on the outside, but I want you perpendicular to the open door so that you can, like if you wanted to squeeze the wall. Yeah. So one hand on each side of the door, squeezing. And like that, so both hands on the same side of the door, but on the opposite sides of the door frame. Yeah. So you have support in both directions from that door. Good. And now like that, cross your legs. So you have something really good to hold on to. And try pushing the door over, like you wanted to push with your left hand and feel what your feet do. And then push with your right hand and feel what your feet do. And then begin to explore how much can you move your pelvis around your two hands there with your feet crossed, just to see what dance is possible. Feeling the bottoms of your feet. There's something about standing with the legs crossed that makes you really have to feel the bottoms of your feet in order to move. These are much smaller movements than the movements we were doing before. Okay, good. And then go for a walk. And feel how your feet respond. And go back to your door frame and cross the other foot in front. So your hands are holding on to the door frame. You cross your other foot in front and then begin to push the door like you were trying to push it over to the left and push it over to the right, and feel how that movement goes down into the floor. The connection between the floor and your hands pushing. And how your pelvis has to twist a little in order to do this. And one hip has to go up and down a little. And then go for a walk. And just sense how your arms are swinging, how your hips are swinging. And put your hands on both iliac crests as you're walking and feel how much movement there is in your pelvis as you walk. Let your shoulders go left and right as if they were your arms swinging. And I love what I'm seeing. I see some people sitting down. It's like, okay, enough of this already. It's good that you're listening to your body. That's like the most important thing. And other people playing because they're having fun playing. It's all about your learning and what's going in for you. All right, and come back and sit down. So I'd love to hear some comments about what you discovered about yourself in this lesson. What felt different in different parts of it?
I noticed that I do a lot of mouth breathing.
My nostrils. Okay, and do you notice, did you experiment with nostril breathing versus mouth breathing?
Yeah, because my default is breathing through my mouth rather
Uh-huh.
than
Let's
my.
every I'm curious about something.
Sure.
Everybody tip your head back a little and see, is it easier to breathe through your nose or your mouth? And then tuck your chin a little, just a little, not a lot, and see, is it easier to breathe through your nose or your mouth? There may be something to do with the head position that impacts what breathing we choose to do. And so that might be something to experiment with in other lessons as you're playing with it. If you notice yourself mouth breathing, sense the distance between your chin and your chest and vary it a little bit and see if that has an impact. This is a curiosity. I haven't thought about this before, but okay. Other observations, noticings. Rich, wait a sec. Gotta unmute yourself. There you go. Thanks, Noel.
I noticed that the crossing of the feet in the doorway allows me to do some exercises and stretches that I normally can't do because I don't have enough balance for it.
So holding on to the doorway like that gives you the stability that you can do more exploration. That's great. Yeah. Doors are handy, right? We're supposed to go there if there's an earthquake. You can stand in the structure of it.
Meet your friends at the doorway. Yeah.
Yeah. The doorway is your dance partner as you're playing with movement. Yeah. This lesson is fun to play with lying on your bed. So if you have some time after the lesson, go lie down for 5 minutes. And because when you're lying on your bed, you can put your hand on your pelvic crest, the iliac crest, and try and roll over in bed and feel how your pelvis moves, like really sensing that bone twisting around as if you were drawing a line on the bed with your hip. And there's a lot of power to it. And the more you have that sense of the bone in there, the easier movements become. And you can play with your shoulder on the bed of really sensing how the bones are moving against that.
I'm curious, how many people use two pillows when they sleep? I find that I can breathe better at night if I use two pillows under my head
Ron,
as opposed to
what position do you sleep in, on your back or on your side? Or your
my
stomach?
side.
On your side.
Yeah,
So
both left and right.
stand up, Ron, so we can see a little bit more of your shoulders. Okay. And look at the width of Ron's shoulders. So when you're sleeping, you're trying to get your head in line with your spine. And Ronald's a broad-shouldered man, so he's going to need a thicker pillow to support his head in line with the body. So some of it is the width of our shoulders that impact how much pillow is needed. But the other is that if you're ending up, so if you imagine me lying down and you see my head tilted like that, what that's going to do is lengthen all the muscles for me on my right side. And if I'm lying on my right side, that's going to be a lot more comfortable, because if my spine is perfectly straight when I'm on my side, all the weight is on the shoulder and the hip, and they get cranky. So the ability to lengthen the side of your body is part of what allows us to settle into the bed, and tipping the head a little bit will lengthen that side of your ribs. So you may be liking the higher pillows because it helps you flatten in the bed so that you're supported by more of it. So it's definitely something to experiment with for comfort. Yeah, but you asked a question. You wanted to know how many other people use multiple pillows. Let's give Ronald his answer. If you, okay.
There you go.
Mostly the guys with broad shoulders who are raising their hand. So some of it is physiology, but some of it is also, I'm sure, the ability to flatten. When the next time you're in bed, notice, are your ribs on the top side a little squished together and the ribs on the bottom spread apart? And if not, experiment with that and see if you can get more comfortable in bed. Any other noticings from the lesson? Things that surprised you, got you more curious about something? Something you might be thinking, I'm going to play with that. Ann Wood. Oops, can you unmute yourself there?
Just freeing up one shoulder that seems to never move and
Ah,
trying to do different things with your brain and your shoulder.
uh-huh.
That was really helpful.
Yeah, because if you have one shoulder, like my left shoulder, just it likes to roll forward and it likes to just hang out there. And when I do that, my walking doesn't go as smoothly, and I'm a skater and my skating doesn't work as well. And this putting the arm on the wall and dancing around it resets it, and then it swings better, and when it swings, my hips swing and my walking gets better. So it's this lovely chain that you can influence by that playfulness around the hand and the shoulder. Yeah. You could try the same thing lying in bed or lying on the floor if you get down to the floor. I've seen people put like a rock in their hand and then dance their body around the rock in their hand, and just to play with it. I see Barbara playing with thoughts about this in the chair. You could also do it sitting in a chair. If you lean back in your chair and attach one shoulder to the chair and then move the rest of yourself around. It's not quite as elegant when we attach to a chair as to a wall, but there's still, by leaving the arm and shoulder in place but seeing what else can move, it just helps wake up the parts of you that aren't engaged.
I found it interesting to twist my rib cage a little bit while I was walking. That was an interesting feeling.
Yes, that twisting of the rib cage in walking is, I think, the most important thing for walking balance, because when you twist your rib cage, it allows you to get your weight completely over one foot. And so just even in your chair here, everybody sitting up to the front, try twisting your rib cage a little to one side or the other and see how that makes your shoulders go forward and back. It's that twist of the rib cage that allows our arms to swing, and you feel when you twist your rib cage how it pulls one knee forward, and when you twist the other way, it pulls the other knee forward a little. That's part of the motion that lets our legs go back and forth, the walking motion. Yeah. That might be the thing to play with this week, is the twisty ribs. Notice if you can keep them twisting a little bit, what that does to you. All right. So you have some new ways to play with a wall and some new abilities of moving in the middle. And next week I said we would play with ways to make sitting more comfortable, since we're all doing a lot of sitting. So little things you can do in sitting to keep yourself comfortable and to make it so that when you stand up, you can still walk if you've been sitting for a long time. All righty. I'm going to stop the recording.